traveled to South Korea 5 times now since 2022. Here's how much I spend, plus tips to those visiting on a budget. Everything is in my blog post linked below. For my first trip in 2022 for 3 weeks in Seoul, Busan, and Jeju, I spent $1,800, not including international flights. The next summer, I spent $1,600 in Seoul, Gyeongju, Pohang, and Busan. In September 2023, I spent $360 for just 6 days in Seoul. That same November, I spent $450 for 8 days just in Seoul for autumn. My last trip was in November 2024, and I spent $1,000 for 3 weeks in Seoul and Busan with a few day trips. The cost of hotels really depends on the season you visit. I also tend to book last minute. Here's what I spent on different hotels. Budget hotels will be around $30 a night. The highest I've paid was around $70 a night. For longer stays, I do Airbnb. You can find solo rooms for $25 a night and full apartments for around $40 a night. To save more money, you can stay in hostels, which can cost as low as $15 a night. I usually book on Agoda or Trip.com. I'm only going to cover flights within Korea, but from San Francisco, I usually spend $700 to $800 on a round-trip flight. The only flights you'll usually do is to and from Busan and Jeju Island. Otherwise, it's really easy to go from city to city within South Korea on buses and trains. Also, the airline doesn't really matter too much. I just go for the cheapest and a good arrival time. And if you book in advance, you'll get cheaper prices than I did. Sometimes local flights can cost as low as $18. Here are some of my flight costs within Korea. Busan to Jeju in July, $80. Jeju to Seoul in July, $82. Busan to Jeju in May, $55. Jeju to Seoul in May, $58. I sometimes take a Kakao taxi because it's a little cheaper, but I usually take Uber since my payment card is already on file. Here are some example rides. 33-minute ride within Seoul at 11 a.m., $9. 1 hour ride from Myeongdong to airport at 3 p.m., $48. It does increase at late night. 40-minute ride from Busan Station to Haeundae, $14. 18-minute ride to Jeju Airport, $7. The average cost of subways are around $1, including transfers. It depends on how many places you'll go in one day, but you can allocate around $5 on subways a day. Buses cost almost the same as subways. I take buses when there's no subway station, like in Gyeongju or Jeju, or if the subway stop is too far from where I'm going. Local buses within the city cost about $1. There's also an airport limousine bus going from the airport to downtown Seoul, and it costs about $13. To travel to another city, you can take the KTX train or express bus. I usually take the KTX train from Seoul to Busan, and it costs around $40. If the ride's 3 hours or less, I usually just take the express bus. Here's some example costs. Bus from Seoul to Gyeongju for 3.5 hours, $22. Bus from Gyeongju to Busan, 1.2 hours, $7. Bus from Pohang to Gyeongju, 30 minutes, less than $3. KTX from Seoul to Jeonju, 2 hours for $25. You can pre-book your bus ticket at Klook.com or at the ticket kiosk at the station. You can check the prices of the buses and seat availability on the TX bus website. You can also book your KTX train ticket on Trip.com or on the Korail website. Book early for peak seasons to popular cities like Jeonju. I usually don't do tours, but they're good if you're short on time, or they're for places that are hard to get to, like the DMC. Klook is the most popular tour booking site for Asia, and it's usually the cheapest. Other ones are Viator, Trazy, and Get Your Guide. Here's some example tour costs. DMZ Day Tour, $55. Nami Island Day Tour, $60. Full Busan Day Tour, $50. If you're traveling with a group, it could make more sense to book a private driver or tour. Most popular attractions in Korea are free or inexpensive, like cultural sites, museums, and nature sites. The ones that do cost money are like observatories or cable cars. Here's an example of costs for some of the most popular sites. Palaces in Seoul range from $1 to $3. To go up the Lotte World Tower, $16. The Seoul Tower Observatory, $11. Hanbok rentals, around $10. Blue Line Sky Capsule in Busan, $28 for 2 people. Waterfalls in Jeju, around $1.50. In general though, you can go to so many places in Korea for free. The cost of food will always vary, but it's relatively cheaper than that of the US, but more expensive than other countries in Asia. On average, I spend $15 to $25 on food. You could definitely spend less or more than me. I often skip breakfast and snack on convenience store items or have an early lunch. I usually eat a really big lunch to fuel like hours of walking. For dinner, I usually have something small like ramen from the convenience store and chips, which I know is not the healthiest. If I had a light lunch, I'll head to a restaurant for a proper meal or go to like a dessert cafe. Desserts in Korea are usually really dense and filling. For an easy and expensive dinner, I sometimes get the $5 vegan burger set at Lotteria. Rice forever, but the American me usually craves burgers and fries once in a while. Here's examples of my average food costs. Korean food, $7 to $8. Western food, $10. Cakes and desserts, $4 to $5. Drinks at a restaurant or cafe, $4 to $5. Street food, $1 to $3. I only use an eSIM card now, and I usually get it from Klook or Aralo. For 1 month of unlimited data, it's around $35. For 1 week, about $10. You can get cheaper eSIMs from MobiMatter or NoBand. I usually do my laundry at local laundromats, and it costs $3 to $4 each for a dryer and washer. Your hotel or stay might have one, but usually those dryers dry really slow. And just FYI, tipping is not a common thing in Korea. These are personal expenses that are unique to my interests. You should factor your own into your budget, like any beauty treatments or big tech purchases. My biggest costs for any country are usually concerts. Here's what I spent for concerts in Seoul. Super Junior, $93. Wonho Fan Meeting, $70. Wonho Musical, $70. Outdoor Music Festival, $80. Shopping is another expense unique to you. Whenever I visit Seoul, I usually bring back albums and snacks with me. Albums, $12 to $15 each. Skincare, $8 per item. Vegan meats, $5 per item. If you're buying souvenirs, the smaller things cost around $1 to $4. I don't track every expense down, but I do start with a general budget on a spreadsheet. I try to minimize accommodation and flights so I can spend more on guilt-free things like concerts and food. The expenses you choose to prioritize will be different from mine. If you want to check price estimates and plan your budget further, you can use these sites, but try not to stress over every small detail. That's Koreal.com for KTX prices, a TX Bus website for bus prices between cities, Naver Map for bus and subway costs, Naver or Google Maps for restaurant menu prices, and Klook.com for specific attraction or tour prices. Agoda.com is where I usually book my accommodations throughout Asia. It's usually the cheapest and has good cancellation options. The second accommodation site I use is Trip.com, and you can also buy your KTX train tickets there. I mostly use Airbnb in Seoul if I'm staying more than a week. I like the convenience of hotels, but I can save money with Airbnb. Klook.com for tours, activities, and inner-city buses. I use Skyscanner.com to compare the prices by month and then to see which day is cheapest to fly out. Then I book directly with the airline site or Trip.com, where flights are sometimes cheaper. Okay, that was a lot, but I hope this was helpful. After 5 trips to South Korea, I believe you can truly enjoy your trip on a budget. Here's a quick average summary costs. I'll probably do a budget overview to Japan or Thailand next. Have a great trip to Korea, and remember, you're there to enjoy yourself.